Hey, what's up, guys? This is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings NBA video for Monday, March 21st. What I decided to do today is give you guys a little bit of a NBA Notes video, and what I mean by that is throughout the day, I follow a lot of different sites on Twitter that give injury updates and injury news, and as things come along, I write them down, and then what I do is I go and I look up the stats of some of the guys in these teams. So I'll go into the game logs and I'll see, well, when this guy's injured or when that guy's injured or when this guy's starting or when that guy's starting, who really gets the benefits. And I think it's something beneficial for all you guys to start doing because it is a good way to figure out, okay, if he's out tonight, who's the guy that I want to swerve to and get into my lineup. So let's call up the slideshow and then you guys can see a little bit more about what I'm talking about. The first situation that we're going to discuss today is the Kevin Love situation. Now, we've already had reports coming in from multiple different sources this morning that Kevin Love is, his back is hurting. Some sources are saying he has an illness. Some sources are saying that he missed shoot-around. I don't know exactly which one of those three things it is or which one of those things is going to keep him out tonight. But when you take all those things together and you're getting all these reports coming out, there's a good chance that he's not going to play. Now, it is a good spot versus Denver for a power forward, so it would have been a good spot to use Kevin Love. But let's assume that all these reports are basically pointing to the fact that Kevin Love is probably going to sit tonight in a game where they very likely don't need him in order to beat Denver. Well, the last two times he sat out, Kyrie had 40-plus fantasy points in each of those two games. So Kyrie Irving's going to be one of the guys that we're going to tick up. He's the one who gets the usage bump over LeBron James. LeBron basically had one game where he went for 50, which is a little above what he's been averaging, and another game where he went for 41, which is around what he had been averaging. So he hasn't really seen a huge usage bump with Kevin Love out. He basically does the same amount that he always does, but Kyrie Irving is the one who seems to take on a little bit of a bigger role. So Kyrie is the guy that I think I would look at tonight, and his price is a little cheaper too, so you do get a little more upside by going that way rather than going with LeBron. Now, in the last two games that Kevin Love is out, Tristan Thompson had 29 and 25 fantasy points. That was decent when he was still a little bit cheaper. He's gotten a little more expensive, so I think it's an okay spot for him. I think he will get a little bit of a tick up here. I think the guy that might slide in a tournament would be a guy like Channing Frye. He had I think it was 39 fantasy points the last game that they played without Kevin Love. So I think that he could be a guy who sees a lot of increased run in this situation. And in that case, I think he could be somebody who puts up a really big number, and he has a really cheap price. Tristan Thompson's price has come up a little bit because he's been starting and playing more minutes. Frye is really somebody who's just getting a boost because Kevin Love is out. So he would be the guy that I think has more upside in the tournament. Now, the next situation I want to talk about is the Andrew Bogut situation. It's another high total game here for the Golden State Warriors against Minnesota. In fact, I think it's the highest total on the board today at 232 points. Now, we know Festus Ezeli has already been ruled out. So if Bogut's out as well, with Bogut out, we've seen Mo Spates be the guy at min price who's put up some big minutes and had some decent fantasy scores in the 20 and 30 range. Nothing spectacular, but, something that you want to look at minimum price. Now, the guy who had been getting the biggest tick up has been Draymond Green in these situations. He tends to have more rebounds in these games when Bogut is not out, and he also tends to play a few more minutes. They go with that small ball lineup with him at center a little more often. It might be a little tough for them to do that against Minnesota, who's got the two bigs in Dang and Karl Anthony Towns. But again, with Festus Ezeli out and with Andrew Bogut out tonight, if he is, they have Anderson Varejao, Mo Spates, and then basically Draymond. I mean, those are the guys that actually get minutes in the game. Maybe a little McAdoo as well. But for the most part, Draymond Green's going to be the one who sees a ton of minutes in that situation with the other guys kind of rotating around. Now, another guy that I think we should look at here, with Andre Iguodala out, I think it's going to tick up Harrison Barnes. Barnes and Iguodala usually get a tick up as well when Bogut's not playing. So if Iggy's not playing as well, we're going to see big minutes for Harrison Barnes. His price is still pretty cheap. I mean, he was a guy who was on the winning roster in the crossover the other day because he's like 42 or 4,300, puts up 30 fantasy points for you. I think we can get 25 to 30 fantasy points out of him for like 4K for 4,200 again here today or 4,300 again here today. So those would be the guys who I think benefit the most. I actually like Barnes whether or not Bogut is in, but if Bogut's out, I think that people aren't going to realize how good of a play that makes Harrison Barnes. He's somebody I want to have exposure to. Now, the last situation we got to monitor is the Pau Gasol situation. Gasol is still listed as doubtful in a great spot against the Sacramento Kings. I'm assuming that he's not going to play. So if we take that assumption, with him out, we've seen upticks across the board in minutes, shots, points, production, total overall fantasy points for Nikola Mirotic, for Bobby Portis, for Taj Gibson. Now, Mirotic is still pretty cheap. I think he's 52 on DraftKings. He might only be like 49 on FanDuel as well. So I think he's a guy that in a game – now remember, this is Sacramento, so everybody gets a tick up against Sacramento. These guys are all still cheap, and they're getting a tick up because they're playing without Pau. I think all those guys are going to be in play. Mirotic, Portis, Gibson, I think you can look at any of them. Now, Derrick Rose is also a guy who gets more offensive-minded, and lately he's been kind of cheap because he sat out and had a couple bad games. So without Pau Gasol in there, Rose is somebody who's asked to do more on the offensive end. I think in this matchup at Sacramento, he's another guy that we have to take a look at. Now, Jimmy Butler is usually another guy who would get a tick up without Pau out, but he's still not 100% recovered. He's not playing the full number of minutes that he had been playing. He's still priced up as a guy who's, doing all that he had been doing. He is still kind of expensive. I think I'd shy away from Jimmy Butler tonight, but I do think Derrick Rose and the trio of forwards who we mentioned are all in good spots. I mean, I wouldn't even be opposed to somebody who wanted to roll out, like a Dougie McDermott tonight as well. As long as he's still cheap, he's been putting up some big numbers too. He might be another guy that you can look at. Again, you're getting a paced-up game. It's a very good situation for anybody who's going up against this Sacramento Kings team, especially at the shooting guard spot. So I do love the fact that it's a great matchup for Butler, but I just don't know if I can get behind him. I mean, he's only been putting up 30 to 35 fantasy points lately. He would need to have a better game than he's having lately in order for me to think he'd be somebody that's a viable option. But again, if he does have a big game, I wouldn't be surprised, but I'd probably keep it to tournaments only. I don't think I would roll him out there in my cash games today. But all the other guys are pretty cheap, so I do think all the other guys on Chicago are cash game eligible. So those are some of the things that I'm looking at today. Those are some of the notes that I have written down here. Those are some of the things I'm going to be monitoring. Be sure to come back later on tonight. As you know, today's Monday. We'll have the Pivot Show here on DraftKings at 5 o'clock Eastern. Myself, Josh Kalachi, Ricky Sanders, Jimmy McCormick, Nick Mencio. I'm not sure who else is going to be on here tonight. But you'll get a chance to hear from all of us, get a chance to see who we like in our plays, and we'll go over any of this late minute news and see who are some of the guys that are going to benefit from it. What we like to do is whenever I see some of this news early in the day, I'll take a look at these guys and see who the guys that benefited the most the last time they were out are. Like the situations that we just went over and what we did there. I think the better you get at understanding that, the easier it is for you, because sometimes this news doesn't come out to 6:45 or 6:50, and you got to scramble right before lock. So if you already have the research done and you know who's going to benefit, it's a lot easier to make some of the changes you have to make to your lineup last minute and, still wind up with a lineup that you can win some money with. So thank you guys for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.